Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the panel on the preparations for the next OSI field exercises. My name is Gustavo Hakim Gerade from the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission. I was part of the Israeli delegation to Working Group B. Until 2 years ago, I held the position of Chief of Policy Planning and Operations Section of the CTBTO On-Site Inspection Division, being responsible for the development of the planned field build-up exercises, which lastly were postponed due to the global COVID crisis. I'm actually a member of the Integrated Field Exercise 2025 Scenario Task Force Group. Exercises, and particularly integrated field exercises, play an integral role in the efforts to build up the OSI element of the verification regime, as they allow various inspection activities, techniques, processes, and procedures to be tested. The approved OSI exercise program for 2022-2025 foresees the conduct of a build-up exercise in 2024 as a final preparatory exercise in advance of a large-scale integrated field exercise, which will be held in 2025. During this panel discussion, we'll have a broad view of the preparations for the next OSI exercises. We will start from lessons learned from past experience, through exploring the ways to further develop the OSI capabilities by looking at different perspectives from well-experienced OSI surrogate inspectors and young scientists. Following panelist notes, we will open the floor to the audience for questions and comments. So let's start. It's a pleasure for me to introduce the first panelist, Dr. Gordon MacLeod. Gordon serves in technical program management role supporting the source physics experiment in Rock Valley direct comparison and supporting seismoacoustic, physical signatures, and radionuclide experimental activities. He's involved with the IFE25 Scenario Task Force Group and has been testing the ability of NDC in a box to operate in the cloud environment. He's part of the US delegation to Working Group B. Gordon previously held the position of Chief of Policy Planning and Operations Section at the OSI Division in the CTBTO and was the project manager for IFE14 in Jordan, as well as for the build-up exercises 1, 2, 3, and 4. Prior to that, Gordon worked at the Nevada test site for 26 years and was a threshold test ban treaty on-site inspector, joint verification experiment participant. He backstopped the US delegation to the Arms Control and Disarmament Conference in Geneva during the CTBTO negotiations. Gordon, the floor is yours, please.
Yeah, thank you for that. I didn't realize I wrote that much in my introduction, sorry.
I invented half of it.
So I wanted to back up a little bit. As you probably guessed, I'm kind of have some long experience. And in 2005-ish timeframe, there was a report put together called the STAR Report, and it was by US Ambassador Starr. It was looking at the process we should be moving through for training, exercises, and in his report, it had sort of culminating with mock inspections, which we've never done. But that led to the IFE07, and we were testing, or 08, I guess it started in 07, went to 08. Anyway, if you look up on the screen, you kind of see a stoplight chart, and there's two of them. These were part of our reports to Working Group B on the progress of what we were going to actually exercise during the IFE14, and also leading up into the build-up exercises as well. And you can see that there's been, between the end of 08 and what we did in 14, there was a lot of technologies that were added. Now, a lot of these technologies were added because the state's parties actually donated equipment and expertise to be able to conduct these during IFE 14. And so if we can go to the next slide. You can see two that are in red. One is the resonance seismometry, the other is drilling. And so one of the things that I fully expect as we go forward into IFE25 and the exercises, build-up exercise before that, is to try to make these at least maybe yellow or green, depending on which one it is. I think we still don't have a drill rig, so I'm pretty sure that's maybe some shade of red to yellow, maybe orange. But we will go forward and exercise all these things. But one of the key things that I think for people to take away is that there's been a lot of progress within the on-site inspection division. A lot of the equipment that was provided by state parties is now in the standard set of equipment. It's not going forward with the new equipment. The other thing is that we made a lot of progress with our, and you saw presentations and posters on GMO, the Geographic Information Management for OSI, which my follow-on person named. I just was calling it 2, but you know, it was easier. But anyway, that went forward. It's very impressive. If you get a chance to actually look at it, I think it's, when you look at the exercises, these things will be really quite impressive to people. And so there's been a lot of progress, a lot of the training cycle, third training cycle, and now we have linear training cycle going on. Those people are coming in. So all these people will be coming up to speed and exercising, and the whole point of the IFE is to basically do a stock take to make sure that what equipment is there, how we're doing it procedurally, how we're doing it from a training standpoint, that we're going in the right direction. And then that provides lessons learned, and we basically fold those into the training cycles or into the equipment regimes. So that's historically how we've done it, so it's sort of a planning exercise kind of cycle. And that's pretty much what was asked for in the STAR report back in 2005. So we're just exercising what came out of the PrepCom and the working group.
Next slide.
Yeah. And this last slide was just basically saying that we also want to test the equipment working in as realistic an environment as possible. So we actually measured radiation, we measured noble gases in IFE 14. We had search parameters that basically we were using the equipment so that you could actually see things. The only one that we didn't really do was for active seismic. It saw what was actually in the ground. Oddly enough, there was an anomaly right below the test area, so that worked out too. Sometimes you get lucky. But that's part of the key, is to make it so that the inspectors are very interested in the scenario, actually interested in getting the work done and getting the reporting done, so that they are investigating and learning as they go. And that's our goal for IFE 25 as well.
Thank you very much, Gordon. And if I can continue from the phrase you mentioned, that the whole point of an IFE is to ensure we are going in the right direction, I think the next speaker, which is Mr. Malcolm Coxett, can emphasize this phrase. Malcolm has contributed actively to the development of the CTBTO OSI since 1999, including in IFE 14 and other integrated field exercises. He leads the team of experts developing the scenario for the IFE planned for 2025. From 2004 until 2022, He served as a task leader for the elaboration of the draft OSI operational manual in Working Group B. His career dedicated more than 30 years to technical aspects of nuclear and chemical non-proliferation and disarmament as an advisor to and expert for the Australian government, focusing on the design and implementation of related treaties and their verification mechanisms. Malcolm, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gustavo, and good afternoon to everyone. I think I've been very lucky to have been involved in this work over 20 plus years, and I had the honour to bring Richard Starr in to give us that key guidance that started us down this process of integrated field exercises. And Gordon's given us a very nice description of how we do that with a sort of a cyclical process. Gordon has talked about what we've done. I want to talk a little bit about where I think we are and what we need to do next. And of course, IFE 14 tested a lot of important things as Gordon laid out, but we've done a lot of work in the OSI area since to build capability. And as Gustavo has said, we need to now put that to the test. Now, we hope to do this in 2020, but COVID messed things around in that area. We really have some catching up to do here. And so it's great that we have these two exercises, the build-up exercise in 2024, for which I should say Gustavo is effectively the lead scenario designer, and then the IFE in 2025. So what I think we've done up to 2014 is to show a really good capability to search for signs of a nuclear explosion in an area with terrain that is not too challenging, somewhere where you can get and drive, you can look around, your movement is not too constrained as an inspector. And we've shown an ability to gather evidence at, if we think that there is an area where something looks potentially related to a nuclear explosion, we've shown a capability to gather evidence such as through visual observation, through radionuclide techniques, and to look at the surface and say, yes, there may have been a nuclear explosion here. And of course, if you can get the noble gases or the other radionuclide particulates, you could have a really good, strong case to say that there was non-compliance here. But it's not always going to be that simple. And I can well imagine other test scenarios where we're going to have to clarify some more complicated questions. And in particular, what we're going to have to look at beyond looking at the surface is we need to start to think about looking more than the shallow subsurface. So to be clear, what we did in IFE 14 did look at the shallow subsurface, but we need to look deeper, because if you don't have clear indications in relation to radionuclides, you may be wanting to look for evidence of a cavity or major subsurface disturbance. And that's something that I think we need to be taking further, and these exercises give us an opportunity to do that. So we have a great team of experts looking at the scenario design. I'm really honoured to work with them. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to say an awful lot about the shape of the scenario, at least our thinking at the moment. I hope that some of you may be inspectors or otherwise involved in this activity, so I'm not going to give the game away. But clearly there are a number of things we need to do. We need to more fully apply our geophysical techniques to look deeper for signs of an explosion or cavity. We specifically have to look at the question of what we call horizontal emplacement, which is where you may have a tunnel dug into a mountain. This is a scenario that is obviously the case with some countries that have tested relatively recently, and it's one that we really haven't looked as closely at as we should. We've done a lot of good work in terms of radionuclides in the PTS, and we've also discussed things in Working Group B regarding the sampling and analysis processes. These are really critical to saying whether or not there was a nuclear explosion, and we need to put our new thinking to the test there. One thing that is in the treaty, but we've not yet tested, is this idea of a requesting state observer. This is someone who will come in from the requesting state to watch the inspection activity, and potentially they will want to be satisfied that it's happening properly, and they may try to influence the way the inspection happens. So this is an interesting game. Obviously, we've done a lot of work on the OSI operational manual. I'll talk about that more in a moment. One of the things that we need to do, and we've always said for years that we have to do, is to really thoroughly engage the IDC in the preparation for an OSI with all the analysis that needs to be done. There are still some complex political questions around how you do that, but I think there's really good practical work can be done to work this out. And just finally, the tabletop exercise in June of last year highlighted a few of the key issues that senior management in the CTBTO will need to address when there is an OSI. It's great to see a further such TTE planned for late this year, and we fully intend that the build-up exercise and the IFE should engage senior management because that is going to be critical to the way a real OSI will play out. So let me just finish, because many of you will know that the draft OSI operational manual has been too much of my life, but there are a few interesting things that we will be looking to test in the IFE and the build-up exercise. Ideas of standing arrangements so that logistical issues can be dealt with ahead of time, if that's possible. For those involved in OSI, they're familiar with this concept of a base of operations. So far, we've only ever had one for an inspection, but it may be that in complex terrain, you need to have multiple bases of operations. So this is something to test. I mentioned all the radionuclide sampling and analysis issues. We absolutely have to test that because that's critical to compliance issues. And just finally, many of you will know that drilling into the potential cavity of a nuclear explosion is the final and ultimate test in relation to compliance. And for years, people have said, well, we're not really ready with drilling. We're not ready to do it yet. But I think we are ready, and many of us say we are ready to apply geophysical techniques in a way which will examine or plan for a drilling activity. And that's something that really does need to be tested, and we're hoping to work into these exercises. So they're some of the priorities, but I have to say that we haven't exactly worked out which ones yet, so I'm not giving away any spoilers. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Malcolm, for your words. And I think because you are not giving us any spoiler, I think it's a good time to move on to experienced inspectors and young inspectors. And the next speaker is Peter Sankey, who is currently a senior technical advisor to the Directorate Assurance at the United Kingdom Atomic Weapon Establishment, covering both warhead and national security programs at AWE. He was the UK expert on the International Scenario Task Force, in which planned and executed the complex IFE-14 in Jordan. He is the UK STF lead on the upcoming IFE-25. From May 2009 to May 2012, Peter served as the Director of Strategic Technologies in the UK Ministry of Defence. Prior to this, Peter headed up the nuclear security program at AWE, where he was responsible for nuclear intelligence, nuclear treaty support, crisis and consequence management, along with related science and technology development. He was the AWE International Liaison Officer, coordinating AWE international exchanges. He was seconded to the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office at the Conference of Disarmament in Geneva as direct support during the CTBTO negotiations. Previously, Peter was the Deputy UK Underground Test Director when he was responsible for diagnostic and fielding activities associated with the UK test conducted at the Nevada test site. Peter was awarded an OBE for services to defense in the Queen's Birthday Honor in 2004, and he was also awarded the US NNSA Gold Medal and the Office of the Secretary of Defense Medal for Exceptional Service in 2012. Peter, the floor is yours, please.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Gustavo. I'm going to talk about the value of exercises, and I will use as much of my background as I possibly can. I'd like to discuss two topics. One, training and accreditation, and secondly, testing of a capability, and just as importantly, and I think we sometimes forget this, capacity. So let me start with slide one, please. Training and accreditation. I think one of the first considerations should be a decision, and I'll give you just an example, on whether personnel are trained and accredited for special roles in which they're expert, or do they multitask and fulfill a number of roles. And I might ask my colleagues to my left whether they have any comment on that later. It goes without saying that it's very important for personnel to have regular training with their colleagues that they may not meet up with as much as they would like to. And that's to build, I've found, to build a mutual trust and, on the other hand, be aware of other personnel's particular foibles, because they are around, I can assure you. The more experienced should take every opportunity they can to engage with and transfer their knowledge to new personnel. The use of virtual training should be maximized. Accreditation, and this is important, accreditation of personnel and equipments is essential if the result of these activities they carry out might result in a legal or a court case. Could I have slide two, please? I'd now like to turn to the topic of testing capability and capacity. Tabletop exercises can be extremely useful, particularly with new challenges or new concepts. And Malcolm has alluded to the same. One example, and I'm going to jump around between CTBT and other, but one example for CTBT might be to present the CTBTO with an OSI scenario. The resulting decision-making from that could be which technologies to use, the order of the technologies to be deployed, the number of and which personnel to deploy, equipments to be deployed, is there a refresher of staff needed, and what time is needed. And that last one will always be underestimated. The next topic is to test when you test a specific technical capability or process. Absolutely essential again as new technologies are developed. There's a huge difference between testing equipment and process in the laboratory and then in the field. It's important not to forget regular training of extant capabilities also. It was widely accepted during the CTBT negotiations in Geneva, can you believe it, nearly 30 years ago, that several of the proposed OSI technologies and techniques were at a very, very low technology readiness level and would need extensive laboratory development. As you've heard from previous speakers, more and more of these are bearing fruit now and hopefully to be tested in the upcoming IFE 25. I'm particularly interested in seeing how the active seismic and deep earth technologies, as Malcolm said, will perform in whatever the scenario may turn out to be. Could I have the next slide, please? Now, full scale, I can call them integrated if you want, I call them full scale. And I want to try to address capability and capacity. Absolutely essential again. This is as close to any real thing as you can possibly get. So what are personnel previous experiences? Well, in my view, mostly this will be for short, set periods of time, maybe days, maybe a week, maybe 24-hour working with 2 shifts, but still fairly short period of time. So with that in mind, I'd like to touch on a few issues, many of which I have encountered in real life. So, long periods of time away. And what happens? Everybody wants to play the hero. Yes, I can do this. I can work those long shifts. I can work those ad infinitum. Sleep deprivation, you've got to watch that, and you've got to watch your staff. However hard you've trained or exercised before, there will be previously unseen scenarios or scenes. So, how do you identify personnel and equipments? How do you assemble the personnel and equipments? How do you transport the personnel and equipments? This can all be at very, very short notice. Some people might be on leave. Some people cannot be released by their parent company or country. Capacity, I've touched on. Can you rotate your personnel in and out? We had a rotation in Jordan, but some people stayed for the whole 4 weeks. So if you've got enough people, please rotate if you can. Please be on the lookout for people who are just showing signs of maybe family issues. Please look after your staff. Alcohol can be a problem. Sorry to be so particular, but alcohol can be a problem. Watch that. Malcolm has alluded to different and possibly more difficult terrain. And I really remember from Jordan, when we had the SAMs going out to the south of Jordan, it was difficult. It was more terrain. They had to climb mountains. They had to put the stuff up the top. So please be realistic when you're planning, when you're using more difficult terrain. Think about political implications. And I'll just give you a minor example here. Reports are to be made during an inspection, OSI, and these will go to the Executive Council, which then will deliberate on them. So you do have to bear political implications in mind. Real life issues, you'll meet those. You won't be able to plan for them, you will meet them. And I think Nikolai is in the audience. I remember well in Jordan, Nikolai and his team had just put out a SAMS set of 4 seismometers, and some Bedouin started walking towards us, and the police officer who was our escort took me to one side and said very quietly, I think it would be better if you collected up your equipment and moved to another site. So these things happen, and they have happened. Climate, temperature and other weather extremes. Jordan was pretty good. Temperature was fine. It rained a bit the second part, but it was okay. In-country transport difficulties, trains, roads, and communications. I listened in on an OSI talk yesterday about a possible OSI in the tropics, and I thank the speaker for that. And he said how difficult position finding was. Now, this is critical to an OSI, and that can be very problematic if you're beneath the canopy of the jungle. And his possible solutions were A, resort to maps, which we've probably all forgotten about, or climb the trees to be above the canopy. I hope Malcolm won't ask me to do anything like that. So, in conclusion, only by performing regular, full-scale exercises where some or all of the above have been experienced will you create a team or teams who A, work well together, B, work with and be familiar with proven accredited technologies, C, suitably assess new challenges, D, perform well in the field, and E, achieve a satisfactory result. I will leave you with one last thought. The future of artificial intelligence is vogue at the moment. I wonder how that might change my views as this is developed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, for this extensive list of well-based recommendations. And from my point of view, the take-home message is that mutual trust among surrogate inspectors is crucial. And I think this is a very good opening for the next two speakers in the panel. Let's start with Alejandra Isabel Martinez Gonzalez. She was born in Caracas, Venezuela. She's graduated as a geophysical engineer from Simón Bolívar University, worked at the Venezuelan Foundation for Seismological Research as a seismology researcher and seismicity analyst. She was part of the third training cycle of OSI surrogate inspectors as a young seismic geophysical technique surrogate inspector. Alejandra is currently doing a master's degree in seismology at the Ensenada Center for Research and Higher Education in Baja California in Mexico. Please.
Thank you, Gustavo, for that introduction, dear panelists and dear audience. First, I have to say that I'm honored to be here with such an experienced OSI inspectors, so thank you to the OSI division for the opportunity. As a seismologist, being part of OSI was a true learning experience. And I want to talk first about my particular experience. Hopefully, someone of you could feel inspired, identified, or motivated to participate in OSI in the future, because I have to say it's a real life-changing experience. Especially, I want to talk to women here in the audience, young professionals, early career scientists like me, and especially from developing countries, like me also. Before OSI, I was in what I like to call my comfort zone in my professional life, just working at the office, analyzing my beautiful seismograms in Venezuela. Then I received the nomination for my regional introductory course that was in Argentina in 2018, if I remember well. And after that, if I remember well, 5 years of training, I have to say that I became a better professional. I got more field experience. For sure, I already have a field experience because I'm a geophysicist, but I'm talking about high level and high quality field experience during OSI trainings. Using new technologies, updated procedures. Now I have a broader experience in instrumentation, for example. So from the most simpler seismometer installation, which is a 3-component seismometer for resonance seismometry, for example, to a very complex installation, which is the seismic mini array. So that is just related to my specific technique, which is seismology and geophysicist. But on the other hand, we also learn about how to communicate soft skills, leadership, and this is very important, if you're not a field team leader or any kind of leader during the training, you also learn how to disagree with your leader during an OSI. We also learn how to take care of ourselves and others within the team through the health and safety procedures. Recently, I also had the opportunity to participate as an external facilitator in the Regional Introductory Course 24 in January in Thailand. So that was a priceless experience because for me it was like a check. Now I can deliver this knowledge to others. And finally, OSI teach me how to integrate all these things to reach, for sure, the 3D goals. But as I say, I also won here because now I got this knowledge that made me a better professional, that made me grow. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alejandra. And from here, we can move to another third training cycle surrogate inspector. The next one is Nortin Titus, who is a geophysicist at the Geological Survey of Namibia and currently attaché in the permanent mission of Namibia in Vienna. Nortin has been involved with CTBTO issues since 2011 and has been heading the CTBTO office in the Ministry of Mines and Energy in Namibia. He joined the OSI training program in 2016 with the start of the third training cycle and has participated in practically every training course of the third training cycle. Nortin has since graduated as an surrogate OSI inspector and take over the position of the OSI operational manual task leader in working group B. Nortin, please.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of slides that I would like to share, and I am supposed to talk about host country support and my experience as a OSI surrogate trainee. Well, I think this photograph exemplifies what the experience is. So the top left corner is the first day where everybody met each other in 2016. And the picture just adjacent to it is, I think it's in Lech in Slovakia. So this was the first introduction on what an OSI is, and immediately you have primed people that this would be where they would be applying their trade, applying their knowledge. So I think that when it starts off, and as you can see, everybody's at their desk, and after a few years, people are not scared anymore to be in their national dress. Once the serious parts are done, we have Gayan there from Sri Lanka. And, people have gone from, being, I think there's some people there that became parents in that photograph, that became married in that photograph. I don't know if there were people that got divorced, but you have really got to go through a transformational process, as Alexandra has explained as an OSI inspector. At the end of the day, the treaty has got this component, the on-site inspection component. And it's very different than the other two, because the other two you can every time do it virtually. You can set up a scenario on a machine. But with the OSI, at the end of the day, you end up knowing that it's the people that do the work. So you have to deliver this training, you have to deliver this knowledge, you have to deliver it to a group of people that also needs to have what I call an absorption capacity. So it's not only that people should know what they are doing, but that people have a passion for what they are doing and a passion for what part of the treaty they are playing. Because at the end of the day, what they go and get in the field, the evidence they collect, determines, and they are not the decision makers. They are just the ones that put the document together. Other people decide on what's in that document. And everything about that document will be scrutinized from the beginning to the end. How was this collected? Who collected it? Where does that come from? Who gave the right to? And all that is where Malcolm and them come in, writing what you are allowed to do, what you are not allowed to do, what the treaty tells you to do, what the treaty tells you not to do. And absorbing all of that as a new recruit, you just think, well, I've been chosen because I'm such a good seismologist, you know. And when you leave the training cycle, you realize that while I came in being biased towards one technique, but you move away from being biased with your technique to actually applying how an inspection is being done. You actually follow, you know, the inspection team functionality, things that have been developed over decades. And as a trainee, I just feel incredibly privileged to have gone through this training program, and also how it has been delivered. We can go to the next slide. And this picture sort of exemplifies to me what the OSI training is. It's about discipline, commitment, and dedication to this OSI regime. I think in the third training cycle, and it's the same with the second, people have started to develop also the inspection techniques, the procedures, as they were being trained. And I think what was really special about the third training cycle and the people that were doing the training, they started to use the experience that was in the group. They started to use what was available to improve. So looking at IFE 2025, I think there's no doubt that it will be the most sophisticated, most advanced exercise that has ever been conducted, because now you also have trainees that not only come with their skills, but that has also adapted the inspection techniques to what works and what has got a high chance of working. So you have professional development during this period where you learn how to be a support member, how to be a team leader, you know, how to be, you know, an individual, a leader for yourself. You have a lot of personal development and specialist development as well. But at the end of the day, you know, what impact do you have? And I think even for member states who have trained inspectors, the OSI, you know, having a surrogate inspector, you know, from your country, the impact is enormous. We underestimate what this training does to those individuals in member states. It teaches you an incredible diverse set of tools which you can go home and you can go and apply. I'll give you an example where one of the trainees, we developed a risk management system for our own office when we go into the field, very much based on the OSI techniques. So that experience, I think, and my hair's going like Malcolm's. I guess I'm also destined for developing the OSI regime further, because I think it's one part of the treaty that is so different from other treaties, and that makes use of such an incredible set of tools and people. And to get people ready for that, it's an incredible journey that one has to follow. And just a small dedication, just to say thank you to the people delivering the training, you know, because they are really, I would term like an oil, you know, they are transparent, they remove the heat, they remove the ugly shapes in the machinery, you know, so that the whole team can work as a unit together. So that was a great delivery as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nortin, for these very important topics that you mentioned, which are, in my view, are focused on the human part of the OSI. Now, I think now it's time to open the floor for some questions. And if you allow me to kick off the questions, I would like to ask a question to two of our panelists, but the others are also invited to comment. As you mentioned, several years has passed since IFE 14, and there is a substantial further development of the OSI verification regime. So Gordon and Malcolm, what do you think are the main elements of the OSI verification regime that should be tested in the next BUEs or IFE 25.
You want to kick it off? You want me to?
All right. Well, you go.
Okay. I guess I could be trite and just say all of them. But I think seriously, you heard from the inspector trainees, circuit inspectors down the table. We believe we have them ready to go. We have procedures that are ready to go. And then we have the equipment. And so we need to make sure it all integrates together. And that goes into something that was developed as we went into IFE 14. These poor people were trained in it for a long time, and that's inspection team functionality and the field team functionality. And the PTS is also interwoven that with their geographic information for OSI system. And they've also integrated that into EMO, which is their equipment information management for OSI. And those systems, to me, are going to be key in the test, is to see that those things actually integrate, that we don't end up working with paper, that we actually have a cohesive inspection regime. And I think that people are going to end up adapting during the IFE 25. There's going to be some challenges, things are going to happen, and it's going to be their training and their ability to adapt with what the tools are that are there. And I think that's going to be what I'm looking forward to.
Okay.
Left you a lot.
So the first thing I would say in response to that is, you took the words out of my mouth, Gordon, so that's great. Actually, people talk about this thing called GMO, they talk about EMO, they're wonderful terms, but they actually are something incredibly valuable as tools for making our OSI work better, we hope and trust. And the exercises are going to be really important for putting those to the test. I think the point I would add is that, as I said, I think we have got a good, strong capability to conduct an OSI in what one might term a sort of a vanilla case. And that's not to diminish it in any way at all, but rather where things are relatively straightforward to do, we can do it now, frankly. But we need to go 1, 2, 3, 4 steps further, but now is the time to be taking that first sort of next steps to make life a little bit more complicated for our inspectors, surrogate inspectors, and to actually put to the test a lot of good work that's been done in some of these, in dealing with the deep geophysics, those sorts of things. So we need to go from having a good, strong vanilla capability to really one with some sophistication, and I think we can do that, and we will show that we can do that through these exercises.
Yes, Peter, please.
If I could just endorse what's been said, I think we should not. I think we should concentrate on the continuation part of the exercise. Not to say we won't do the initial, but we should concentrate on the continuation and the techniques for that. And I think to pick up a couple of threads that have been mentioned several times before: more difficult terrain and possibly more difficult climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Those that want to ask a question, please go to the microphone. So in the meantime, I have also a question from people that are following us on video. So if I can ask this question, and then you will be the next one. I think this question could be for Malcolm. What are the differences in terms of duties between inspectors of OSI in the CTBTO and inspectors at the IAEA?
It's a big question. There are, of course, many differences. What is similar is nuclear. What is different is that one goes bang and one hopefully doesn't. I think probably the biggest difference I would point out is that OSI is something which may never be used, or it may be used once or twice or a small number of times. And we really have to practice through things like exercises to get it right and to get it as good as it possibly can be. Now, I don't want to in any sense suggest that IAEA safeguards is any less of a thing. I mean, it's been developing over 50 plus years, or more than that indeed. But they've had time, they've had numerous practical activities to develop their capability, and it's come to be something which is incredibly powerful, incredibly capable. We have to try and do that a little bit without doing it for real, and that's an interesting challenge. I'm not sure that I've really answered the question because it is such a big question in terms of the capabilities, but to me, that's a big thing.
Malcolm, yes. Gordon.
Okay. So I think one of the other things that Malcolm kind of touched on but didn't completely is that the inspectors in the IAEA are actually staff members of the IAEA. So they're professionals that are actually within the IAEA. That's what they do for a living. Our inspectors, myself included, have regular jobs, daytime jobs. So we're not together all the time training. We can only train when we have these exercises or when we have training events, or now, thanks to COVID and some expansion of virtual capabilities, we're able to do it virtually. But it's one of those things where it really makes a difference, and I think Peter touched on it, is to be able to know who you're working with, be able to work as a team. These inspectors, they learn that very quickly, but they're also, you could be with a third cycle inspector or a linear inspector, or somebody like me who's stuck in the Stone Ages and was trained in the first experimental training cycle or something along those lines. So back in the 90s. But anyway, that's what to me is one of the biggest differences is just the level that you can actually train to and how you train. And as Malcolm alluded to, they're constantly doing that job, but these people are volunteers that are inspectors from the state parties.
Yeah, Norton, please, and then we will move to your question.
Yeah, I think that's what Gordon said, that at the end is what I wanted to add, that I would have framed the question as, why can't a safeguard inspector that does nuclear accountancy do on-site inspection? Of course they can, but the biggest difference here is that whereas you have inspectors from the agency, or let's say from OPCW employed, the on-site inspections actually come from member states. So it's people from their respective countries that form the inspection group. So I think this is the big distinction between an implementation agency of a treaty and the on-site inspection regime, where the member states, their surrogate inspectors, are actually doing that component of the inspection.
Thank you, Norton, and please.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for this fruitful discussion, and I want to mention something about regarding the first slide presented by Dr. Gordon. So you focused in the inspection techniques, and we saw the big progress in IFE 14 comparing to the IFE 08. But I think there are some other factors could be included in the comparison as the variety of the nature of the inspection area. The two previous IFE were conducted somehow in the similar environment. And I think the selection of the inspection area for the IFE 25 will be very significant if we include various environments and terrains like mountains, lakes. So this will allow to have different area of interest in the inspection area, maybe because as you know, to have an IFE is not in 1 or 2 years. This is take 5, 6 years. So if we think to come to different environment, this will take 30 or 40 years to come to work on different environments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Somebody of you wants to?
Actually, I'm going to, if I can. So if you recall, yesterday afternoon, we had Nalin give a presentation about OSI, or trying to do an OSI in the tropics. And he talked about it, you know, not all the equipment was going to work the same, everything else. The list they put up actually was from sort of responding to what was in INF 1105, if you want to go look at it on the ECS. But it was what equipment was available to the inspection team. And then the inspection team has to figure out what they're going to actually do using the processes in the field. And so this is, and this could even be beginning back in the OSC when we first start putting together the inspection plan as to what equipment are you actually bringing into the country to do the inspection. So I agree completely with what you said. And I think with each environment that we go to, we're going to have to modify or think about how that piece of equipment works. And I guess the best example I can give of that is early on I was doing work with the threshold test ban treaty, and we had some radar data that we were using, ground penetrating radar. And I took it out into the desert, and I had an old CRT screen, and you can't see the screen in the desert sun. So you have to have a tarp to put over your head so you can actually see the screen. I think no matter which environment we go to, we're going to have to deal with that. Another one was in the Arctic. I had to have heaters to keep the CRTs to actually be able to work. So again, everything, I mean, the equipment works really good in a temperate environment. As you go to the extremes off the edges of the temperate environment, we're going to have to respond to that. And that's where the experience of the inspectors and then the experience of the staff at the PTS is going to have to help so that we can actually do these executions. And I think I made a comment to Nalin that he needed to get together with Peter Lebach to tell him all the tricks that he uses when he goes out in the field for making connections, putting connectors together that end up in, in a swamp, things like that. All those things, those little things that make an inspection possible, we're going to have to understand what those are for each of the environments. So you're exactly right with your comment.
Maybe we have only time for one more question, and I think there is a question from the floor, please.
Do we have time for 2 questions?
One question.
No, 2. One for each side. For the
Split it in one.
scenario task force group, what is the importance you're going to give to the current capabilities of the PTS in terms of equipment when you design the scenario? And if I may, to Alejandra, imagine that you are the inspection team leader. How would you prioritize the training prior to IFE 25? What has to be the priority list? Thank you.
Okay.
I can answer first?
Yes, please. Ladies first.
Well, I think that you need to test everything. First, you need to prioritize your expertise, because everything in OSI is about timing, so you need to be, of course, efficient, but fast. installing stations with the techniques, etc. And then all these things related with emotional intelligence, for example, soft skills, leadership, logistics, negotiations. Everybody needs to know about this, health and safety. And finally, the integration of all of this, the inspection team functionality. So for me, that's the 3 things that I prioritize as an inspection team leader.
Okay. So I think my answer for you, Luis, is that it's not actually for me or for the scenario task force to decide which equipment is used. It's actually for the inspectors or the surrogate inspectors. So we should have all of it available that we possibly can, and we will try to design the scenarios around their use. But at the end of the day, it's the inspectors who will make that decision. So this is a non-answer. I'm sorry. It's probably too big a question. Thanks.
Okay, with that, we are approaching the end of this panel. I want to thank all the panelists for your contributions, also the audience for your questions and patience. And I wish you and all of us a very fruitful and challenging BUEs and IFE 14. Part of this panel will be responsible for that the field exercise will be challenging. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the SnT conference.